love because he first loved us. Well, that's it. We love because he first loved us. Because he first loved us.
And I like that Neil said it 3 times, because it's like the first time you just say it, then the second time it starts to work on you a little bit, and then the third time it starts to ask you questions. And I think it's like that with a lot of God's word. You know, we can just read it, because we've read it before, haven't we? And then you read it again and you think, oh, wait a minute, there's a bit more to that. And then the third time, it's like, well, someone once said to me, you've stopped reading the word and now the word's reading you.
Very true.
So, yeah, this word has been reading me very much over the last couple of weeks. And at first, I suppose I could have said, oh, I'm going to talk about something we know all about. We know all about love, don't we? You know, we really know about love. And then you say that a second time and a third time. And what I've begun to realise is, I know about love in theory, but I've got an awful lot to learn about love in practice. 20 years ago, 2005, I went on my first trip to Israel. And I had a fantastic time. I went with a friend of mine, Nick, who a few of you have met. And yeah, we just had an amazing time. It was like a real eye-opener. Very near the beginning of the trip, we met what turned out to be a very remarkable person, a lady called Valerie. So I'm going to tell you a bit about Valerie and then something that she said to us. Valerie is a Hungarian Jew, or was a Hungarian Jew. She died in 2020 at the age of 100. So she was brought up in Hungary and born in 1920. So at the beginning of the war, she was a young adult, at the beginning of the Second World War. And she just got married actually in Hungary when 2 or 3 weeks later, after she got married, the German troops arrived in her village, and the whole village was Jewish, so they rounded everyone up and they took them away. And I'm not going to tell you loads about that because you know that story. I'm just going to tell you about Valerie, really. Yeah, just a few weeks after she was married, the troops came, they took them all away, and they took people to different camps. Valerie, her mum and her sister were taken to Auschwitz. Her husband was taken elsewhere, and other people were taken to all of the different camps. Over 18 members of Valerie's family died in the camps. One of the things that's remarkable about Valerie is that she survived Auschwitz. Another thing that's remarkable about Valerie is that she went then on what they called the death march through Czech Republic, or Czechoslovakia I think it was then, and she survived that, and that's when she escaped. Also remarkably, she met her husband after the war, and they got back together, and they had children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. But one of the most remarkable things I think about Valerie was that in all that she had experienced, she still had a great love. So whenever you met her, there was always this spark with her, especially in her eyes. She had this real sparkle, even at 85 when we first met her. And we kept visiting Valerie over the years, and she shared all these little gems of wisdom with us, and just, you know, her love and her zest for life. But as I was preparing this sermon, I particularly remembered something that Valerie said to us, and we filmed it. For those of you that know Nick, of course, we filmed everything virtually. And she said this: we must stop the hate. Hate kills. It kills everyone, even whole peoples. We must stop the hate. Which is a huge challenge to me. And as I was thinking about all of that, I've started to contrast hate with love. Jesus said it himself. He said in the Sermon on the Mount, you have heard it said, or you've seen it written, do not murder. But I tell you this, don't even hate your brother. Don't call him names or her names, your sister. Don't even harbour anger in your heart towards, because that's, you've already committed murder in your heart, basically, is what Jesus is saying. So as Valerie said, we must stop the hate. And as I've been thinking about this, and at times I've found it quite distressing, definitely sad, and something that I guess occasionally I get annoyed about. But, we live in a very divided and divisive world. There is a lot of hate. You can see the hate. Neil referred to some of the conflicts going on around the world. It's all fueled by hate. We look at the news. We look at social media, for those of us that are daft enough to do so. We even look around, in our families, in our communities and so on, and unfortunately there is a lot of hate. And at times when I was looking at this word, I even looked in me and I found hate. And that, I'm not happy with that. I'm not happy with hate in me, but I'm not enjoying hate elsewhere. So we must stop the hate, as Valerie said. We must stop the hate. So, enough of the hate. Let's start talking about love. Very famous passage, John 3:16, talks about why Jesus came. He came to love the world. And that's really what he showed us. Everything that he did and he said, and everything that when he said to us, follow me, it was all about this is how you love. He was showing us how to love. And he's kind of passed that baton on to us as followers of him, how to love. The thing we now have to figure out, and we have to figure it out every day in every circumstance, is how do we love? What does love look like? That became like a key question for me. What does love look like? So what I'm going to do fairly quickly is go through 4 passages of scripture where Jesus talked about different aspects of love. And then I'm quickly going to give you 4 examples that I've seen where people showed what love looked like. And it's like, yeah, that's what love looks like. Now Jesus, we have this discussion, the 3 of us, me, Glyn and Irene. And one of the things Glyn, when I said, what does love look like? Glyn said, quite rightly, it looks like Jesus. Well, of course it does, yeah. He is love. He's embodied, he's personified love. But now we've got to figure that out for us in our lives and for each other. What does love look like? So here's 4 passages where Jesus talks about love. So the first one's in Matthew 22. I'm going to refer to them, I'm not going to read all of the passages. But in Matthew 22, someone came up to Jesus and said, what's the greatest commandment? Maybe not a question about love, it was more about someone trying to be clever, I think. They were trying to catch him out. What's the greatest commandments, they said to Jesus. And Jesus gave 2 answers, both about love. So the first one, he said, well, the first and greatest commandment is love the Lord your God with all of your heart, with all of your soul, all of your mind, and all of your strength. That's like everything, isn't it? Love the Lord your God. So that's the first teaching on love. We need to love the Lord our God with everything that we've got. And it says elsewhere in Scripture how we do that. If you love me, you will obey my laws. You'll do what I say. Or very simply, as Jesus said, follow me. That's the simplest way of doing all of that. Follow Jesus. Sounds simple, but as we all know, it's challenging. And then he said the second commandment, the greatest commandment, is like it. And then sometimes I think, how is it like it? But anyway, that's what Jesus said. It's like it. And the second one is this. Love your neighbour as yourself. Love your neighbour as yourself. Now, again, there's a whole load of stuff wrapped up in that. So the first thing is, there's a kind of a fifth love here, because you've got to love yourself, which is different from self-love, you know. It's loving yourself is about looking after yourself as a temple of the Holy Spirit. It's about looking after yourself as an image bearer of the Creator God. That's what loving yourself is. Self-love is about, you know, buying yourself loads of things and thinking you're the centre of the universe and you're, very different to each other. But there's a third love. We need to love ourselves. And sometimes a lot of us struggle with that. You know, we've maybe suffered things in the past, or we've done things in the past that we find it difficult to love ourselves. You've got to love yourself. Because at the end of the day, you keep yourself warm, don't you? You know, you feed yourself. You have a brew when you want a brew. There's all sorts of things that you do for yourself. These are very basic things that we should do for our neighbour. And then there's the question of who is our neighbour? It's Thingy who lives next door, isn't it? Glyn, it's Glyn, isn't it? Lives next door. Margaret, whoever it is, it's the person who lives next door. Another clever person asked Jesus that, who is my neighbour? Again, I think they thought they were being clever. And Jesus gave them an answer, didn't he, in the parable of the Good Samaritan. So he said, no, it's not the rabbi who lives next door, and it's not the scribe who lives next door, and it's not this person. It's not who you think it is. And he told the story of the Good Samaritan. And of course, Samaritans then were very much the enemy of Israel. You know, Jews and Samaritans didn't mix. But that was the neighbour that Jesus talked about. So we've got three lots of love already. Love the Lord your God. That's the beginning of it. Love your neighbour is the second, and love yourself is kind of in there as well. So already there's a lot of challenging love there, I think. You know, this is difficult to do. John 13, when Jesus was sat with his disciples at that Last Supper, the last night that he was alive on earth with his disciples, he spoke again about love. A new commandment I give to you, he said, love one another. For by this action, by these signs, in other words, love now isn't just words, is it? It's something you've got to do. People will know that you are my disciples. That's how they're going to know that we are his disciples, by our love one for another. If they don't see love, maybe they'll wonder who we are. We're just another group of people who sit in a building somewhere. But if we've got love for one another, we're his disciples. It's visible. Love one another as I have loved you, said Jesus. As he has loved the church and gave himself for the church. Again, a huge standard for how we should love one another. And the fourth passage I will read because it's a bit longer. And it's in Luke 6. And it builds upon some of the things that we have already read. This is what it says starting at verse 27 in Luke 6. Nevertheless, to you who are listening, those who have ears, what I say is this: love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, pray for those who mistreat you. If someone hits you on one cheek, offer them the other cheek. If someone takes your coat, let them have your shirt as well. If someone asks you for something, give it to him. If someone takes what belongs to you, don't demand it back. Treat other people as you would like them to treat you. This is now getting really challenging. You know, it was easy at the beginning. Well, love God because he loves us. Yeah. Love my neighbour. Well, yeah, if you're talking about someone next door, I can do that, generally. Except for when they borrow something and don't give it back. Oh, we've got that here now. Love one another. Of course we should love one another. Yeah, we're family. But now, love your enemy. I have to say, this is when it got very challenging for me. First of all, to figure out who my enemy is. Because it could be just that group of people, or it could actually it could be a lot of people I now consider to be my enemy, and then to love them. How do I do that? What does love look like? Now, if you think I've got loads of answers to that, I'm going to say to you, I'm still figuring all of this out. Day by day, person by person, step by step. Will you help me? And I'll help you. We'll try and figure this out together. Let me give you a few examples of people I've seen where I've said, that looks like love. And I'm going to give you historical examples, and they're not people that you know, except for the fourth one. You will know the fourth person. But all the first three examples all come from a time when I used to help at like a homeless thing. Every Monday night in Rochdale, we'd meet in the Salvation Army. We prepared food, and we entertained, or they entertained us, about 25 to 40 street people. Homeless, rough sleepers, alcoholics, drug addicts, whatever. Just people, you know, we opened the door and whoever came in, they ate with us and we sat down and ate with them. And in a way, that was, I guess, we were trying to show our Christian love for these people who haven't got a whole lot. One of the pictures that I saw at Bridges, it was called, still is, it's still running, was a woman called Jo. Jo was like a foot doctor. She looked after people's feet. And she knew someone, one of our volunteers, and she said, you know, what about if I came along every week and I offered to sort out their feet? Or, you know, through the meeting, people can come and go, they can go and have their food or whatever, but all the way through the meeting, which was about an hour and a half, 2 hours, she'll do people's feet. Now, I don't know if you've ever seen the feet of a homeless person, but particularly as we're getting into winter, I can tell you that some of them only had one pair of socks, only one pair of shoes, and sometimes they'd get wet and their feet were a mess. And Jo would be down on this little stool at sort of knee level, and she'd be lovingly looking after their feet. And then she said to us, some of these feet need a lot of care, they're really in a mess. How about we bring in socks, so when I've done their feet, we can chuck away their old socks and we can give them some new socks. And how about, for those whose shoes are leaking, we bring some boots or, you know, strong shoes. And all of a sudden I started to think, this woman down at foot level with homeless people, that's what love looks like. That's what love looks like. That's Jo. She's a real person. You know, please pray for her. One of the jobs I had was washing dishes. So there was me, another guy called Dave, and a lady called Joan, and we were the kitchen crew. So when everything was finished, it would all come in, and we'd wash everything, and then we'd put it through this industrial steriliser, and then put it back away. It all belonged to the Salvation Army. And Joan, Joan in a way probably organised us. So me and Dave did a lot of it, but no, don't do it like that. You know. So Joan told us what to do. Let me just tell you about Joan. 15 years ago or so, she was divorced from her husband. I think well, I don't know what went on, but it was more on his side than hers. And in the end, she decided that she needed divorcing. So they haven't been married for a long time. She lived in Rochdale, he lived somewhere in North Wales. About 6 years ago, she went to live in North Wales near her sister, but it also happened to be near her ex-husband, who has now fallen ill. And Joan said, well, we were joined together. I know we're divorced now in the eyes of the law, but we were joined together, so I'm going to look after him. She's phoned me up 3 times, well, me and Nick, in the last couple of weeks, because she's saying, you know, her husband's now, or ex-husband, is moving into dementia. He's very unwell. Sometimes she's having to stay at his place. Now he's having to stay at her place. They're not married anymore. She hasn't really got a commitment. But she said, I just feel that God's love says that's what love looks like. I told Joan that I'd be preaching about it, and she said, oh, well, yeah, that's not, I'm not really. Yeah. I said, you are, Joan. You personify love. So Joan, please pray for Joan, because she's really struggling at the moment with, you know, just she's with her husband Tony all the time. Pray for Tony as well. He's a believer, but his dementia is really getting grips with him. The third person, there used to be a lady who came. I say a lady. She was one of the homeless people, Kath. She always gave us a hard time, and every now and again she'd say, "You're going home now, Dave, aren't you?" I said, "Yeah. Well, and you're going home to a bed?" "Yes, Kath, yeah." "And you're going to be able to lock the door and no one will come in?" "Yes, Kath." She said, "Oh, well, thanks. Anyway, thanks." Yeah, Kath. Pray for Kath. I think she's still alive. So one night, you know, we do our thing, we do our Christian thing, and Kath had said this kind of thing, which I guess, hopefully you got what she was meaning. And she wasn't having a go, because she genuinely appreciated what we did. But one night, one of the other people who had once been homeless and now was doing a lot better, said at the end of the night, "Kath, you're coming home with me. I've got a bed for you, clean bedding, you're going to be pampered, you can sit in front of the fire, watch telly if you want, we'll have some nice food, but you're coming home with me." That's what love looks like. Fourth person, I think you will know Open Doors, Brother Andrew. So you'll know that for, I don't know, decades, Brother Andrew smuggled Bibles to Russia and then China and other countries that were closed, if you like, to the gospel. And then, unfortunately, because of the books written about him, etc., he became too famous to smuggle Bibles. I don't know if you knew about this, but he basically became too famous to smuggle Bibles. And he was advised by the board at Open Doors, go to Jerusalem and just sit there and listen to the Lord, basically, and see what he's got for you next. And throughout most of the 70s and 80s and 90s, right up to the early 2000s, I just discovered that I think he died in 2022. But in those 3 or 4 decades, Brother Andrew ministered to the church in Israel and in Syria and particularly in Lebanon. And he even went and ministered in the West Bank and even in Gaza. And he, at one point, loving your enemies, he heard about a whole load of Hamas people who'd been arrested in Gaza and elsewhere and just dumped in southern Lebanon. And he said, "I feel like God's telling me to go and see them, and tell them about Jesus, but also see what I can do practically. Take food, take clothing." He ended up running letters, when he went on his various visits, he took letters from these exiled, mainly men, to their families in Gaza and the West Bank. How do you love your enemies? He never once agreed with what they're doing, and he took every opportunity to tell them about Jesus and his mission. And they even invited him when they got back to these various places. They invited him to come and speak, come and speak at the university, come and speak at Gaza Baptist Church, come and speak. That's what love looks like. Jesus, that's what love looks like. But how do we embody that in the current age? How do I do that? I'm struggling, I don't know. What does love look like here, now, today? That's what we've got to figure out, isn't it? What does love look like in your life, in my life, in our life together with other believers elsewhere? So there's some things that Jesus said about love. There's the wisdom of Valerie. We must stop the hate. There's some pictures that I've seen, and there's loads of others, and there are people in this room that I've seen love in them, which is beautiful, but I didn't want to embarrass you or me by, so I'm giving you historical examples. But the challenge is still there. What does love look like today? How are we going to embody love? So I'm just going to invite you to sort of join with me in this quest. How do we embody love in Bootle, in Bilham, in Havrig, wherever, today, with those who are around us, towards the everybody that Jesus came to love in John 3:16. What does love look like? Well, I'm still trying to find out. But it looks a bit like this. And it's out there. Thank you very much.